Welcome. What you are about to watch is not science fiction, and it is not folklore. It is a serious investigation into one of history's most compelling unresolved questions, the mystery of the Indus Valley Civilization, the world's most advanced ancient society that vanished. Across the world, in universities, research institutes, and field excavations, serious scholars are wrestling with evidence that does not fit the accepted story. Evidence that has been documented, measured, and peer-reviewed, and that still has no satisfying conventional explanation. We are going to look at that evidence carefully, without prejudice in either direction. Not dismissing what is extraordinary, but not accepting it without scrutiny either. The truth, as always, is in the details. In 2600 BC, the city of Mohenjo-daro in what is now Pakistan housed 35,000 people in planned grid streets with flush toilets connected to brick-lined sewers, infrastructure that would not be matched anywhere in the world until 19th century London. The residents used standardized weights accurate to a fraction of a gram. Their cities had no palace, no temple, no royal burial, and no weapons of war. For 600 years, this civilization flourished across an area larger than Mesopotamia and Egypt combined, trading with Babylon and constructing with such uniformity that archaeologists cannot identify a ruling class. Then, around 1900 BC, within what appears to be a single generation, every major city was abandoned. There is no dramatic fire layer, no mass grave of battle victims, no evidence of conquest. Mohenjo-daro, Harappa, Dholavira, cities of tens of thousands, went silent. The Indus Valley Civilization, which at its height may have contained 10% of the entire world's population, vanished so completely that it was forgotten until a British railway surveyor accidentally destroyed part of it in 1856 while laying track. After a century of excavation and 5,000 years of silence, we still cannot read a single word of their script. We still don't know who they were or where they went. This is where our investigation begins. Stay with us, because the further we go into the evidence, the more extraordinary it becomes. The story you think you know is only the surface. Beneath it lies something far more remarkable. Let us begin. Before we examine the specific evidence, we need to step back and understand the context. This case does not exist in isolation. It sits within the broader phenomenon of lost civilizations, and to properly evaluate what we are looking at, we need to understand the broader picture that surrounds it. For as long as human beings have told stories, they have told stories about what was lost. Every great culture on Earth carries myths of a golden age, a time before the current order, when civilization stood taller, knew more, and reached further than anything that came after. For centuries, scholars categorized these stories as allegory, comforting fictions invented by cultures to explain the gap between their aspirations and their achievements. But a quiet revolution in archaeology, geology, and oceanography has changed that calculus. The evidence now accumulating from seafloors, ice cores, and ancient texts is demanding a fundamental revision of the human story, one in which the line between myth and memory is far thinner than we imagined. The conventional timeline of civilization holds that complex urban society first emerged in Mesopotamia around 3500 BC. Before that, scattered farming villages, nomadic hunter-gatherers, and nothing more. But this tidy narrative has been challenged repeatedly by anomalous discoveries that do not fit the accepted sequence. Megalithic structures dated to 10,000 BC or earlier. Astronomical alignments encoded in monuments by cultures supposedly too primitive to understand the sky. Mathematical ratios embedded in architecture that would not be formally derived for thousands of years. These discoveries are not fringe fabrications. They are measured, published, and debated in peer-reviewed literature. They point toward a past far more complex than the textbooks describe. What happens when a civilization falls? Most of its knowledge disappears. The libraries burn, the engineers die, the farmers abandon the fields. Within a generation or two, the grandchildren of architects are living in the ruins of buildings they cannot build. We know this happened in the Bronze Age collapse of 1200 BC, when a networked civilization spanning the Mediterranean was destroyed in a matter of decades. We know it from the fall of Rome. History is not a steady march of progress. It is punctuated by catastrophic resets, after which humanity must begin again. The question is whether some of those resets happened far earlier than we know, and whether their traces are still waiting to be found beneath our feet. This context matters because it tells us something important. What we are about to investigate is not an isolated curiosity. It is part of a pattern that researchers in multiple fields have been independently documenting for decades, and patterns in science demand explanation. With that foundation in place, let us now turn to the specific case at hand. Now we reach the heart of the matter, the core evidence surrounding the Indus Valley Civilization. The world's most advanced ancient society that vanished is more extensive, more verified, and more troubling for conventional explanations than most people realize. Let us walk through it systematically, fact by fact, and allow the evidence to speak for itself. We are not going to speculate here. Every point that follows is documented in peer-reviewed publications, official archaeological records, or government archives that are publicly accessible. The question is not whether these facts are real. The question is what they mean. Consider this first extraordinary detail. The cities of the Indus Valley Civilization, active from around 3300 to 1300 BC, were built on a precise grid plan with streets running north-south and east-west, oriented to the cardinal points. Mohenjo-daro and Harappa each housed between 30,000 and 50,000 people. This layout was replicated across dozens of cities spread over 1 million square kilometers, suggesting a unified planning standard unlike anything else found in the ancient world at that time. This single data point, if taken in isolation, might be set aside. Anomalies happen, instruments malfunction, researchers make mistakes, but as we continue, you will see that this is not an isolated anomaly. It is part of a consistent and documented pattern. But that is only the beginning. Researchers also discovered Mohenjo-daro possessed a wastewater management system in 2600 BC with no parallel for nearly 4,000 years. Individual houses contained brick bathrooms whose drains fed into covered brick-lined street sewers, connecting to larger collector drains beneath the main avenues. Covered inspection holes allowed workers to clear blockages. This infrastructure required coordinated municipal engineering that archaeologists regard as extraordinary. Comparable sewage systems did not reappear in European cities until the late 19th century. Now, a skeptic might propose an alternative explanation for this, and that is entirely reasonable. We should always test alternative explanations before accepting extraordinary ones. The problem is that the alternative explanations, when examined carefully, create more problems than they solve. The mystery deepens when we examine. Across hundreds of Indus Valley sites separated by over 1,000 kilometers, archaeologists have recovered stone and bronze weights conforming to a single standard with ratios of 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, and 64, accurate to fractions of a gram. Brick dimensions were also standardized to consistent ratios across the entire civilization, implying a central authority or shared institutional system enforcing standards across what was the world's largest Bronze Age state. This is where the conventional account begins to strain. Each individual fact might be dismissed or minimized in isolation. But the cumulative weight of the evidence is another matter entirely. Perhaps most remarkable of all, the Indus script, used from approximately 2600 to 1900 BC, contains around 400 to 600 distinct signs found on seals, pottery, and copper tablets. Despite being among the most studied undeciphered writing systems in the world, no bilingual key has ever been found. And scholars disagree whether it represents full writing or proto-writing. Linguist Asko Parpola has spent 5 decades attempting a decipherment, proposing links to Proto-Dravidian languages without achieving scientific consensus. Researchers who have examined this evidence have described it as genuinely difficult to explain within the accepted framework. These are not fringe commentators. They are credentialed academics publishing in mainstream journals, raising questions that the field has not yet satisfactorily answered. Then there is the matter of, in over a century of excavations at more than 1,000 sites, archaeologists have found no palaces, no royal tombs, no depictions of kings or armies, and almost no weapons of war. The Great Bath at Mohenjo-daro suggests ritual or civic function, but no royal compound has ever been identified. This absence is so unusual among Bronze Age civilizations that scholars still debate whether the Indus people were genuinely egalitarian or whether the relevant evidence simply has not yet been found. What makes this particularly significant is its independence from the previous points. This is not a case of one theory requiring another. These are separate lines of evidence converging on the same uncomfortable conclusion. Adding to the enigma is this finding: Indus Valley merchants traded with Mesopotamia from at least 2600 BC, documented through Sumerian clay tablets referring to goods from a land called Meluha, now identified with the Indus region. Carnelian beads from Gujarat, cotton textiles, and stone weights have been recovered from Mesopotamian sites including and Lagash. Indus stamp seals bearing the undeciphered script have been found at the ancient port of Lothal, confirming sophisticated maritime trade routes across the Arabian Sea. Taken together, these facts form a pattern that cannot be explained by coincidence, misidentification, or methodological error. Each piece of evidence has been examined by skeptics. Each has been subjected to alternative explanations, and in each case, the alternative explanation falls short of accounting for everything that has been documented. We are left with a body of evidence that demands explanation and an accepted narrative that does not provide one. This is where serious inquiry begins. Now that we have established the evidence, we need to examine the theories that researchers have proposed to explain the Indus Valley Civilization, the world's most advanced ancient society that vanished. This is where the debate becomes most intense, because the theories reflect not just different interpretations of the same evidence, but fundamentally different assumptions about what is possible and what the past looked like. Understanding these theories is not just an academic exercise. Each one has been championed by serious researchers with genuine credentials, and each one captures something that the others miss. The truth, if it is ever established, will likely draw on elements of several. The first major explanation proposed by researchers holds that geologist Liviu Giason of the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution published research in 2012, demonstrating that the Saraswati River, the Gagahakra, celebrated in the Rigveda, lie dried up between 2500 and 1500 BC as monsoon patterns weakened. With their primary water source gone, millions of Indus Valley people migrated eastward into the Ganges plain. The main objection is that the drying was gradual, not sudden, making it difficult to explain the apparent speed of urban abandonment across multiple major cities simultaneously. This interpretation has significant academic support and is backed by substantial evidence, but it is not without problems. Critics point out that it requires assumptions that go beyond what the evidence strictly supports, and that key predictions of this theory have not been confirmed by subsequent research. It remains contested, and the contest is productive. A rival school of thought argues that the Aryan invasion theory, proposed by 19th-century colonial scholars, including Max Muller, argued that Indo-European-speaking peoples from the Central Asian steppes invaded and destroyed the Indus Valley Civilization around 1500 BC, casting Mohenjo-daro's scattered skeletons as massacre victims. It is now widely rejected. The DNA evidence from Rakhigarhi published in 2019 found no genetic signature of a mass steppe invasion displacing the indigenous population, and the collapse chronology predates the supposed invasion. This theory is controversial and deliberately so. Its proponents argue that the evidence demands an explanation outside the conventional framework. Critics counter that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and that the evidence presented, while suggestive, does not yet meet that standard. The debate continues in peer-reviewed literature. Perhaps the most unconventional theory suggests that microbiologist Sheila Batt and other researchers have proposed that a pandemic of cholera or another waterborne disease spread through the shared sewage infrastructure that made the civilization great, may have devastated the populatio and triggered abandonment. Dense urban populations sharing water systems are especially vulnerable to epidemic spread. The main objection is the absence of mass burial sites or skeletal evidence of epidemic mortality at the scale expected if millions died rapidly from a single infectious outbreak. What is striking about this debate is not merely that experts disagree. That is normal and healthy in science. What is striking is the quality of the disagreement. Serious researchers working from the same body of evidence reaching genuinely different conclusions. That level of fundamental disagreement, when it persists over decades, is a signal that something important has not yet been understood. The question is not which of these theories is right. The question is whether any of them is right, or whether the truth is something that none of the current frameworks has yet been able to capture. The case surrounding the Indus Valley Civilization, the world's most advanced ancient society that vanished, does not rest on speculation alone. What distinguishes this investigation from pure mythology is the existence of documented, physical, verifiable evidence, material that has been examined by credentialed researchers and whose authenticity is not seriously disputed. What is disputed is its interpretation. Let us review the most significant documented evidence as objectively as possible. We are not going to cherry-pick the data that supports a preferred conclusion. We are going to lay out what exists and let you draw your own assessment. Physical evidence supporting this account includes, in the uppermost archaeological layer at Mohenjo-daro, excavators in the 1920 found 44 skeletons scattered across streets and rooms, some showing marks of violence. Mortimer Wheeler interpreted this as a massacre, the city's last moments. Later forensic analysis by physical anthropologist Kenneth Kennedy in 1994 concluded the deaths were not simultaneous and likely spanned centuries, undermining the massacre reading. The layer remains evidence of the city's final phase, but not of a singular violent event. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. Investigators have documented. The 2019 Rakhigarhi DNA study, led by Vasant Shind of Deccan College and geneticist David Reich of Harvard, analyzed the genome of a 500-year-old woman from the Indus site of Rakhigarhi in Haryana. The study found no genetic contribution from Central Asian steppe populations, refuting the Aryan invasion model, and demonstrated that the Indus population was directly ancestral to much of the modern South Asian population, transforming the debate about Indus Valley origins. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. On-site analysis revealed. Satellite imagery from the Indian Space Research Organization and analysis by geologist Rajiv Sinha of IIT Kanpur have mapped an ancient river channel through Rajasthan and Haryana corresponding to the Rigvedic Saraswati River. The dried paleo channel is up to 6 kilometers wide in places, indicating a major waterway that ceased flowing around 1900 BC. Over 360 Indus Valley sites cluster along this dried channel, suggesting the river's disappearance directly drove the abandonment of the civilization's eastern urban centers. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. Each individual piece of evidence might, in principle, be explained away. A single anomalous artifact might be misidentified. A single anomalous date might reflect contamination. A single anomalous eyewitness account might reflect misperception. The question is whether all of the evidence can be explained away, and whether the explanations required are more or less plausible than the evidence itself. When multiple independent lines of inquiry converge on the same conclusion, that convergence is the most powerful signal in empirical science. And that is exactly what we are seeing here. We have examined the history, the evidence, and the theories surrounding the Indus Valley Civilization, the world's most advanced ancient society that vanished. Now, we need to ask the question that is sometimes overlooked in discussions of ancient mysteries. Why does this matter? What does it mean for us today? It would be easy to file this away as an interesting historical curiosity, a puzzle from a distant past with no bearing on our present life. That would be a fundamental mistake. The questions raised by this case touch on issues that are directly relevant to who we are, where we came from, and what the human story actually looks like before the period covered by conventional history. Excavations at Rakhigarhi, the largest known Indus Valley site at over 300 hectares, are ongoing under Vasant Shind and have transformed understanding of the civilization's scale. The 2019 DNA results settled the Aryan invasion debate, but opened new questions about population continuity and migration into South Asia. The Indus script remains one of archaeology's most frustrating unsolved problems. More than 4,000 inscribed objects exist, yet no decipherment commands scientific acceptance. The climate refugee hypothesis, supported by Geoson's paleoclimate data and satellite mapping of the Saraswati Paleo Channel, is now the dominant model for why the cities were abandoned, suggesting the world's most sophisticated ancient civilization was ultimately undone not by war or plague, but by the slow failure of its water supply. Furthermore, the tools available to investigate these questions are advancing rapidly. Satellite imaging, ground-penetrating radar, ancient DNA analysis, isotopic tracing, and deep-sea sonar are all providing capabilities that previous generations of researchers could only dream of. Cases that were genuinely unresolvable 10 years ago are now open to new analysis, and the findings, consistently, are expanding rather than contracting the mystery. The investigation continues. New discoveries are being made. New analyses are being published. New voices are entering the conversation from disciplines that were not previously part of the discussion. The answers, when they come, and they will come, will not merely solve a historical puzzle. They will force a fundamental revision of assumptions that underpin our entire understanding of human history and human potential. We have now walked through the complete case of the Indus Valley Civilization, the world's most advanced ancient society that vanished from the historical record. Rough the physical evidence across the competing theories and into the modern significance of what remains unresolved. What the story of Indus Valley Civilization ultimately reveals is not just a historical puzzle. It is a mirror. It reflects our assumptions back at us, our assumptions about what ancient people were capable of, about how knowledge is gained and lost across the centuries, and about the relationship between what we know and what we merely think we know. The evidence presented in this documentary is real. The questions it raises are genuine. The debate among researchers is ongoing, and that is healthy. Science is not a set of conclusions. It is a process, and the process requires that we remain open to evidence that challenges what we thought we knew, however uncomfortable that challenge might be. If you came to this documentary as a skeptic, we hope the evidence gave you something to think about. If you came as a true believer, we hope the critical examination gave you a more nuanced picture. The truth, as always, lies in the evidence, not in what we want to be true. Thank you for watching. If this investigation sparked your curiosity, please subscribe to the channel. We publish new documentaries every week, covering the full range of historical mysteries that the mainstream has not yet adequately explained. Leave a comment below telling us which case you want us to investigate next. The conversation continues. The investigation never ends.